Hello, West Ham Network. Hope you're all well. It's Holly and I am here with today's daily. Now, the transfer window has left many fans asking why we've got to be so careful in terms of financial fair play when other teams in the league don't seem to have the same issues that we do. So today I'm going to be taking a little bit of a deep dive into that. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do because there's loads of content coming up and we don't want you missing out. Now, to answer this question about financial fair play and why we seem to be in a pretty bad situation in comparison to some of the bigger clubs that seem to be spending a lot of money, you need to look at a few things. So you've got outgoing money in terms of buying players and player wages, and then you've got incoming money in terms of player sales and the likes of sponsorships and commercial deals. And these two obviously play a part in what you can then spend, because financial fair play says that you can only spend a certain amount based on your last 3 years of losses. So earnings are going to top up what you're earning, and spending and losing money is going to bring that back down again. For example, Man City are always questioned, but when you actually look at their model, which sees them take academy players, bring them up to be decent players, and then sell them in their masses for about £15 million most transfer windows, you can actually see how this quite easily counteracts the amount that they want to spend. Then, as an example of the difference commercially that West Ham have, our front of shirt sponsorship from Betway earns us around £10 million per season. And having the option to have a sponsorless version, essentially, it typically decreases the value because the sponsors want to be seen. And to put that into perspective, Man United were getting £47 million per year from TeamViewer, while three paid City £40 million per season. Now that, again, 30 odd million that we're not getting that they are per season, all of this adds up to them being able to spend more in the transfer window. Simply put, the top six earn a lot more than we do, and they make more from the sales of things like merchandise due to the bigger international appeal that they've got. Now, we're in a bit of a unique situation in that we do still have to follow the more strict set of FFP rules because we are in Europe. But we are one of the few clubs that aren't set up as well commercially to make the most of this. And we are in a similar boat to a lot of the ones that are outside the typical top six that have been there for a while. But it's a lot more of a long-term project to actually turn around. So I'm not going to be boring you with it and going into too much detail with it today. But that's one side of the challenges that we have. Now, looking over... can't point the right way, over here, what we're actually going to be talking about is that the lack of direction that we've had. There's been draining finances for years now, and that's largely down to where we've wasted money on unsuitable transfers. And personally, I think this is having a massive impact on what we can spend. And now we have Steighton. We're all hoping that there's going to be more strategy to our transfer approach, which is going to hopefully save us from investing in unsuitable signings and losing money where we don't need to. But to see how much of an impact that this has actually had, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at West Ham's history just of strikers and the damage that this position alone has caused us over the years. Now, it's not going to come as much of a surprise that West Ham have spent over £300 million searching for the perfect goal scorer with 52 strikers since 2010. And the most shocking stat is that of these strikers, 20 of them failed to hit the net once. And the problem you've obviously got is when you bring a player in, whatever you paid for them, if they don't either play or they don't perform, you're only going to be able to sell them at loss. So today, we're going to be taking a look at the real cost of our disorganised hunt for the perfect striker. I won't go all the way back to 2010, and as I mentioned, there are many of them, but we're going to begin with Simone Zaza, who we signed on a £5 million loan deal, resulting in 0 goals and a loss of the entire £5 million that we spent. Then Hernandez joined in 2017 for £16 million. He left in September 2019 after handing in his transfer request and going to Sevilla, having scored 17 goals for us. Not horrific. However, the deal with Sevilla was said to be worth £8 million, totaling a loss of £8 million on him. Jordan Higgill, we signed him for £10 million in January 2018. The sale was for an undisclosed fee, but it was believed to be around the £5 million mark, which would again mean a £5 million loss on him. We signed Allaire in 2019 for £42 million, which was our record signing at the time. We then sold him to Ajax for £18.8 million in 2021 after failing to get the most out of him. And he went on to play fantastically at Borussia Dortmund. That equals a loss of £23.2 million on that deal. So that's a really big one. For anyone that remembers, Albion Ayeti, he arrived for £8 million and he left without a goal, making 12 appearances in that time before moving to Celtic. We sold him again for a loss of £3 million, with him going for £5 million in total. Now for Vlasic, we signed him for £35 million in 2021. Looked relatively promising, but he's not had much of a chance, as well as finding the back of the net just once in 31 outings for West Ham. He's openly said that he's basically fed up at the club, and reports in Italy suggested that West Ham are close to agreeing a £13 million deal for him to move to Torino, where he spent last season on loan. That would mean the result of that actually is quite bad. It would be a loss of £22 million should he go for that amount. Shocker. And then, of course, Scamacca, our most recent loss. We bought him in 2022 for £30.5 million, and he left after scoring 8 goals at West Ham, letting him go to Atalanta for £27 million. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's a loss of £3.5 million, which is not as big as many of the ones that I've just mentioned there. But when you actually look at the fact that the prices of players are rapidly rising at the moment, that sale definitely is not in line with the inflation that we're seeing put on players, as we're seeing, obviously, the price tags just flying up. And when we're now trying to bring in players to replace the players that we're selling, we can't get them for anywhere near that price because we've basically been selling for an absolute bargain. So with those 7 striker signings alone that I've spoken about there, those prices total a loss of £69 million. And they're just a really small selection of those that have come and gone in that position. And this shows the impact that a lack of direction has had over the years with signings, bringing in a fair few players that are of a decent quality, but they just haven't fitted our style of play. And that's where the problems have arisen, because we don't play them. When they do play, they don't play well. And then all we have to do is go, well, we've got to try with someone else, get rid for whatever we can get for them. And by this point, they're fed up and just want to leave the club as well. And that is where we now need to make sure that our recruitment and management can share the same view, so that we can work on building a better team without wasting such huge sums of money. And this would obviously help us massively in terms of financial fair play, because the sums of money that we have got recently for players, it sounds absolutely amazing. And when you add up what we've sold players for this window versus what we've actually spent, it sounds like we are absolutely quids in. But when you've been leaking money for years, you aren't able to spend the same amount that you're selling players for, because basically we're being constantly pushed closer to the line of breaching financial fair play regulations. And as I mentioned in a previous video, it's basically your total loss over 3 years, which gets complicated because we're looking, obviously, Scamacca, if we've just lost 3.5 million for him, this actually has a knock-on impact into what we can do for the next 3 years. And you look at, if we sell Vlasic for a loss of 22 million, him plus Scamacca, we're looking at a 25 million pound loss. And I think it's only 60 million off the top of my head that you can actually have over 3 years. So suddenly you're having to make a profit in windows. And obviously, as fans, we want to see us invest. We don't just want to be seeing profit kind of coming in. So it's a difficult one to understand, and it's obviously a frustrating one to be watching. But now we're in a position where we need another striker, or even 2, with rumours that Antonio will leave. We do, of course, have high hopes from Obama, but putting all the pressure on him and Ings, and maybe dragging Bowen into that position, it just doesn't sound a wise move, especially when we know that we're competing in Europa League. But it isn't just strikers. We've had a really similar situation with players all over the pitch. I just haven't bothered to look into the stats of it all. And we need to strengthen our side massively before the transfer window closes. So it's never been more important for us to make sure that the players that we're bringing in are the right ones. So there you have it. Are you surprised by how much our failed signings are costing us and how much of an impact it's having on what we can spend now, even from mistakes a year, 2 years ago? Anyway, that is my take on why we have to not just choose talented players or ones that have done well in another league or in the Premier League. It doesn't really mean anything unless we have a clear vision of exactly what they're going to bring to our squad, how we intend to use them, and how much of a part they're actually going to play in our season. Plus, being able to actually tell a potential signing how we want to play them and what part they're going to play, and like why we think they're going to help us be successful. That's the best way to show that we value them and that they do have an actual future at the club. As we've seen as well this window, when we're kind of playing hard to get and sort of going, yeah, we like you, but we've also got 4 other people that could probably do the same thing. They want you to buy into them as much as we want to buy into a player. So we need to be able to have a clear vision and communicate that, so that we know exactly what we want. And you look at a lot of teams that don't make lots and lots of big money signings, but when they do, they bring them in and it goes well. And that's because they're not constantly chopping and changing, but instead they go, okay, we need a pacey winger who can ping a ball across. And then they'll find a player that does exactly that, and they'll bring them in, and then they'll improve their game to fit that exact specification of person that they need. And that is how you get a player to be most successful. So there we go, my little rant. We're starting to see a little bit more strategy, though, on the bright side, behind the signings that we're chasing. But as we know, time is of the essence. So Stuyton definitely has his work cut out to find the right signings and reduce the risk of us bringing in the wrong players, because we must stop this leak of money, because it's only going to be getting worse, especially with the amount that it now costs to buy a player. If you mess up and they don't work out for the team and you end up selling them in a couple of years, or you end up letting them go for a loss, it's really, really going to be damaging, because on like a 50, 60, 70 million pound player, goodness knows what the losses could be. We don't want to find out. So do you reckon we are going to be able to turn this around and make some long-term successful signings in the last 15 days of the transfer window? Let us know. Drop us a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. It's definitely starting to look like there is hope, but there is also a lack of time left. So thank you so much, as always, for watching. Please do let us know your thoughts. If you've not already subscribed, never said it like that before, but why not, to West Ham Network, please do, and we would appreciate it very, very much. Have a great day, and until next time, come on, you Irons.